Welcome to Dialogues with Masters, where we are fortunate enough to spend time with some of the most internally technologically advanced beings on the planet, who in addition to developing extraordinary skills, have also strived to develop a profound sense of wisdom and maturity. Because of this very important foundation being laid out, these brilliant beings use their abilities with utmost responsibility and reverence for the evolution of mankind. Today's guest is a wonderful example of this in action, so sit back, take it all in, feel free to ask any questions you may have in the comments section below, and enjoy. Today, we have the pleasure of being joined by a remarkable being whose work helps to bridge the gap between science and spirituality. He has a master's degree in physics, a PhD in experimental nuclear physics, has worked as a physicist at NASA, and alongside Robert Monroe, researching altered states of consciousness at Monroe Laboratories, which later became the famous Monroe Institute, where he would also give lectures on his discoveries. Our guest has methodically explored the nature of realities outside of our physical world, using what is largely considered to be right brain perception in harmony with left brain processing. This has led him to groundbreaking experiences and discoveries detailed in his beautifully written book series trilogy called My Big Toe. Using tested and repeatable methods, he has documented experiences shared in real time with other researchers of realities which exist beyond our physical plane. His groundbreaking work unifies mind and matter while shining a light on the common spiritual foundation of the world's major belief systems in a style very much in line with today's techno-crazed world. I'm very excited about and grateful for being joined by the very accomplished and wonderfully insightful Thomas W. Campbell. Tom, thanks so much for coming on. How are you?
I'm just fine, Stu. It's my pleasure to be here. What I have always thought is that, information and understanding is great, but shared information and understanding is much better. So the whole point of you and I even being here is that we get to share this information with more and more people. And the point there is to be helpful, to be useful to people, to say things that people can use, not just intellectually toy with the idea, but actually things that you can put into your everyday life.
Absolutely. And it's a wonderful perspective that you have, because you could have so easily retreated, as a lot of folks who eventually see the comforts of solitude really do, but you instead share your insights and your perspective. And for that, I'm very grateful, as are many more people, I'm sure. And I'd love to start off with a question that I've asked my previous guests and also plan to ask all of my upcoming guests as well. What is consciousness to you?
Well, I can answer that with probably the simplest definition that you'll ever hear, and that is consciousness is awareness with a choice. That tells you what consciousness is. It's just awareness. What is awareness? Well, awareness is that you see something out there. You're aware of yourself and your environment. There's something that exists. Just, there's you, and then there's other than you. And you have awareness of that. That's awareness. Now, the simplest awareness might just be that you exist in a certain state. But so awareness is awareness of what's inside and outside, internal and external states. And then with a choice. That means you get to choose what you're aware of. You get to focus on what you're particularly aware of. You get to think about it and maybe do experiments with it. You get to make choices about it. So the simplest form of consciousness would be a simple binary. I'm aware that I exist. I'm aware that I can be in state 1 or state 0. And You can't get anything any smaller. If there was just state one, then there wouldn't be a choice. But I have a choice. I can be in one and I can be in zero. So I have a choice and I'm aware. And I would call that like a cell of consciousness, an atom of consciousness, however you'd like to say it. It's like the smallest piece of consciousness that you can have. And that's really where my model starts. And after that, I just let that evolve and see where it goes. I'll let that cell grow and see what it could do and what it would become. And that eventually turns into what I call the larger consciousness system. And that is just consciousness fundamentally. So what is consciousness? It's awareness with a choice. Now, that I give it a choice carries there's a lot of information when I say it has a choice. If it has a choice, that means it has free will. Because if you don't have free will, then there really is no choice. A choice means you have the freedom to make a choice. Also, it means that there's time before the choice and after the choice. Choice requires time. If there is no time, then there can be no choices. You see? So now we have consciousness, time, and free will all logically necessary for each other. You can't have a consciousness without time or free will. You can't have free will without a consciousness. And without consciousness and free will, time itself really has no meaning. If there's no awareness, then what is time? Time has no significance as a thing. So it takes all three of those. So it sounds like a simple definition, just awareness with a choice. But as you see, it philosophically has some more depth to it than that. So, and if we look at philosophy today, and we look at the opposites, in one corner you have what I've just described. You have consciousness, free will, and time. In the opposite corner, the corner that's logically, diametrically opposed, you have materialism and determinism, which is generally the belief that most scientists have. So it's a pretty good comparison. And if you are a materialist, you must be a determinist. Those two have to go together, just like, time and free will and consciousness have to go together. Those two are logically necessary for each other. You can't have one without the other. So if you are a materialist, then you say time does not exist, consciousness does not exist, and free will does not exist there. All of those are hallucinations. And if you happen to be in the corner that I earlier described of consciousness, you look at determinism and materialism and say, materialism and determinism can't exist. They're illogical. They just don't go anywhere. They have no reason to be. There is no point in something that just exists because it exists. That's not, that doesn't even get on the map as philosophy. It exists because it exists. It's kind of the null set. So those are the two extremes in philosophy. One says consciousness exists and consciousness is fundamental, and the other says matter exists, materialism exists, and determinism is fundamental. So those are the two poles about which the world turns. Completely opposite philosophically, where they lead, where they go, the kind of person that it creates, the kind of society that it creates. These ideas are at the root of everything, not only that we do, but everything we are. So it's a good way to answer this question. What is consciousness? It's a choice. It's awareness with a choice, and that's all it takes. Now, all right, does that mean that dogs are conscious? Sure, they are. Does that mean that bumblebees are conscious? Well, I don't know. You have to follow the bumblebees around and see if they make free will choices, or whether they just are hardwired to make certain choices because of their their physical set. But Yes, I think bumblebees are probably conscious because I've seen one stalk another, a human being who was swatting at it, and I've seen it wait for over 5 minutes for that human being to become an available target. And that takes premeditation. That takes, purpose. And you can't have purpose with materialism and determinism. There is no purpose. Purpose has to be something that is denied. So in any case, sure. But now, what about I don't know, what about a clam? If you got its foot out and you touch its foot, it'll jerk its foot in. But why does it do that? Because it thinks and is conscious and says, oh, something's got my foot, I better pull it in? Or is it just, what we would call an instinctual move? It does that because it's hardwired to do that. So there are some things like clams and probably trees that it's hard to tell. Do they make free will choices? Or do they just have very well designed, you what can we call it? They don't really have central nervous systems, but very well designed um, ways of dealing with their environment and with each other. Over the millions and billions of years, they've created responses. So it's all stimulus response, not really any consciousness going on. So we don't know. Trees are pretty interesting. They've got some real interesting communications and what looks like choice making going on down within the root system. So yes, you can't talk to them and they can't walk around, but they have some real interesting things going on there. So they might be conscious in a way that we don't really understand. Consciousness isn't. A lot of people say consciousness, that's a human. And if you're not a human, then you're not conscious. Dogs aren't conscious because they're not like humans. But that's a very narrow viewpoint of consciousness. Consciousness comes in all forms and sizes and shapes and abilities. And human consciousness is just one of those. And dog consciousness is another one of those. And perhaps tree consciousness is another one too. It's like I say, it's hard to tell whether those trees are actually making free will choices or not. But if they are, then they're conscious. If they're not, they're not. So that's the difference. A rock, not conscious, doesn't make free will choices. So it would have to be something that was alive. But trees are alive, but we don't really know for sure until we learn a little bit more about the things they do, the interactive things they do within community. Trees seem to form communities, and they communicate within those communities. And if they've got a sapling in that community that's having trouble, they'll actually send some food over. It's like, they'll send out for pizza and send it over to that, that sapling. They will try to nurture it and take care of it. So that starts to look like choice, but may just be clever programming over hundreds of millions of years. But anyway, so that's consciousness. All forms, all sizes, all capacities. And the point is that all this consciousness is basically doing the same thing. And that is, it's making choices. And by those choices, it either evolves or de-evolves. And I could say it evolves, the quality of its consciousness. Or I could be more technical and say it lowers the entropy of its consciousness. All of those are kind of different ways of saying the same thing. So that dog and cat, they're doing the same thing. They make choices, and by those choices, their consciousness evolves. And so are humans doing that in their own space, in their own way. So you can't think of consciousness as something that belongs to a human being. And it doesn't. This avatar, this human being avatar, is just an avatar. Consciousness doesn't live inside your body. It's not like that. You don't have, the spirit doesn't live inside your body. I know we thought that for thousands of years because it just seems obvious. Well, human has a human spirit. So where is it? Well, it must live inside the body. But that's not the case. That's just a simple idea of long, long ago that isn't the way it is at all. Indeed, consciousness is not physical in the way we define physical. According to our perspective in this reality we call the physical universe, our perspective from here would have to see consciousness as non-physical. Consciousness is a non-physical thing. And we aren't a human body. We are a piece of consciousness. So here we are, a piece of consciousness, and we're, to make a kind of an analog here, we're logged on and playing a human avatar, or a dog avatar, or a mosquito avatar, whatever, wherever it applies. So we're logged on and we're playing an avatar. And that then really, I guess, rounds out my definition of consciousness. Consciousness is what we are. Consciousness is who we are. We're a piece of that larger consciousness system that I told you about that evolves from that binary state. And
Absolutely.
we're just a piece of that. So, yes, those trite sayings that we all hear, like we're all one, that's true. We are all one. That's not just a saying, that's it. We're all a piece of this larger consciousness. And we evolve by our choices. If our choices, we make can move us toward love, which is the direction in which we evolve, and I can go back and do that more technically and more scientifically, but that's kind of the final answer here since we're just kind of starting at the top. We evolve toward becoming love, or we evolve toward more fear, and those are the two opposites. So we're just pieces of consciousness. We make choices, and those choices started out to be something simple because we were just like in this big chat room. We pieces of consciousness all interacted with each other, and I found out that those choices weren't enough. Weren't really growing up very much. We needed choices with consequences. Choices that you would have your heart in and your mind in. It would be all consuming choices. Now that's a choice, a moral choice, an ethical choice, where depending on how you make it, you'll either evolve or de-evolve in bigger steps, not such tiny little steps. So this is the larger consciousness system created a virtual reality for us to play in and make choices in. So I'm kind of giving you an awful lot for this one question, but anyway, it just kind of falls together as what is consciousness and who are we, and we're this piece of consciousness. The larger consciousness system can configure itself like a computer. Has something I haven't mentioned yet, but consciousness is an information system. Think about it. It's awareness with a choice. That's just about nothing else but information. Awareness is awareness of what? That's information. It's aware. It gets information that describes what it's aware of. Now, we do that with sight and sound and touch and taste and feel, but those are all just sensors out there looking for information. So it's this awareness makes a choice, is an information system. It takes in information, and then it has choices what to do with this information, and how to make choices that help it evolve rather than de-evolve. That's kind of its mission to do that. And the system, realizing that we needed a reality with more interesting choices, with more interesting consequences than just sitting around chatting with each other, creates this virtual reality. And it doesn't program it. It starts with a set of initial conditions and a rule set. And then it hits the run button and lets that evolve. Everything evolves. That way it's natural. When you just program something, it's not natural. You make it up, and it doesn't necessarily have to flow or even be logical. But if you start with initial conditions in a rule set, then you let that evolve, and eventually, if you got an interesting rule set, interesting initial conditions, it evolves into something useful. And if it doesn't, well, you change the rule set, and you change the initial conditions a little bit, and then you try again. And you keep doing that until you end up with a virtual reality that has evolved avatars like us and like dogs and cats and horses that are conscious. And then you let your pieces of consciousness play those in that virtual reality. Because in that virtual reality, life is serious. You're standing there and you need shelter, you need food, you need to protect your family. You've got choices that aren't just, oh, should I talk to Susie or talk to Joe today? These are life and death choices that you have, and they come around every day, and you have to make them, and you make them based on the quality of consciousness. Do you make them just because it's all about me, get what I want, or is it based on optimizing the whole? Let's see if we can't get everybody what they need. And that's two different ways of looking at things. So here we are. We're chatting now over some advanced technology here at Riverside, and we're probably hundreds of miles away from each other, having this conversation over technology that has evolved, in this virtual reality that is evolving, and we're making choices. You choose to do this program and to talk about, you know, spiritual things that matter so that other people can learn from it. And, I choose to answer your questions and come on and see if I can't say things that are interesting enough to help people grow up. So we're making choices. And that kind of takes your question from what is consciousness to here we are. So that's probably more than you wanted, but anyway, we'll just let it go at that.
No, that's great. I really appreciate that. That completely thorough kind of journey, really, through what your perspective is on what consciousness is, and there's so many ways, as you mentioned, of knowing, from being a tree to being a human to being a different sort of human. That, just as you mentioned, is gathering information for that larger consciousness system. And
Mhm.
I find it so fascinating that you come from a background which is scientific, academic, and you could say really like a government background also. So you have that left brain aspect developed obviously very effectively. And I find it very intriguing that you have looked to this side and really explored it as much as you have, and have gained so much insight from it, and so many interesting experiences have come along with that as well. And it's actually something I wanted to ask you about. For left brain dominant thinkers, can you explain the value of developing right brain perception, and more specifically, intuition? And from your experience, what sort of abilities, which many people may consider to be in the realm of fantasy, can human beings develop should the true power of right brain perception be responsibly, and I choose that word very consciously, responsibly harnessed and used in harmony
Mm,
with left brain processing?
okay, great question. All right. Right brain, left brain, and intuitive logical processing. These are the things that we're comparing here. Well, you as this piece of consciousness, okay, you're conscious. You think, you're aware, you ask questions, you gather data, you make choices. Okay, now you have two separate paths by which you can process information. And this is just the nature of consciousness, which is what you are. Okay, the one path is what we'll call the intellectual path or the logical path. You look at the information you gather, you try to logically understand what it means and what it says and what its patterns are, and then you make choices based on that understanding. Okay, that's your logical side. On the other side, the intuitive side is not logical at all. You might say it's beyond logic. It doesn't deal with logic, it just deals with information. And it just gets information. you have a query or a question or an idea or some issue you're dealing with, and information just pops up there. That's what's called intuition. Okay, it's a non-logical function. Now we look at those two, and from our viewpoint here in this, what we think is the physical universe, and particularly from our culture, which is very unbalanced to the left brain side, if we look from that perspective, then we have this great tool called logic, and this very kind of iffy tool, even if it exists, it's sometimes right, sometimes wrong, and you just don't seem to be able to get a harness on it, make it work the way you want it to work. That's what it seems like. But that's really not a good balanced viewpoint. Let's look at the two tools. The one tool, logic, okay, it's brilliant as long as you have enough information so that it can make a deductive choice. But if it doesn't have enough information, it's lost. It can't come to a logical conclusion. That logic requires information. So let's say, should I marry Sally or should I marry Sue? All right, now let your logical left brain go crank on that for a while, and of course it'll end up in a tailspin, running around in circles, unable to process that because it doesn't have enough information. Now let's look at all of the questions and all of the things you need to think about in your life that are most important. The real significant things, not the simple things like where did I leave my glasses? That's pretty simple. Well, where were you last when you were using your glasses, and etc. You can generally track those things down, but not small questions like that, but big questions of caring, of love, of relationship, of how you connect to other people and the rest of the world, and how does it connect to you? Big questions. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Should I marry Sally or marry Sue? What job should I take? And if you're in a job, should I keep this job or should I take another one? All of these things are meaningful to you. How should I raise my children? Should I tell them this or not tell them this yet? Should I spank them or should I just lecture them or should I make them stand in the corner? What do I do? So all of these very practical questions don't have logical solutions because there's not enough information. And information that suits one child does not suit the next, or does not suit that parent. You see, so there's all these other little uncontrollable things and lack of information that just make that logical tool kind of useless for the most important questions. Now, where did I leave my car keys? Where are my glasses? Is the sun shining today? There's some things that logic can just grab hold of and do fine. And when it comes to math, it's good at math. Logic is good because mathematics is defined as the logic of quantity. That's mathematics. There is this thing called quantity. Things come in quantities. We can weigh them and measure them and do things that have quantities. In this virtual reality that we live in, quantity is a very big deal. So quantity has certain logic to it. One of these plus one more of these or two of those. That's just logic. So math is no more than the logic of quantity. So being logical is hands down the best way to process mathematics. Now, mathematics is a pretty useful thing. That's a very useful tool. So there's something our logic does that is pretty useful. But the questions about life, what should I do? What job should I take? Who should I marry? Should I have my boy child circumcised or not? Should I do this? Should I do that? All these questions you have at life, and by the way you answer them makes a huge difference in where you go, what your life turns out to be, how productive your life is, what you learn, how much you evolve. These are not just random questions. These are important, significant questions. All right, so on the logical side, on the intellectual side, we have this beautiful, precise tool called logic. And the information it has to work with is just really ratty. We just don't have that kind of information. So it's useful, but you have to realize that a lot of times you're just guessing. You're just winging it, and you think you're being logical, but you're not being logical at all. You're making stuff up. You're making stuff up because you have beliefs, and you believe these things are true. But just because you believe them true does not make them true. So you're winging it a lot. Now let's go over on the other side, intuition. Now, intuition gives you just the opposite set. With intuition, you've got all this information available. Now, some people might be saying, oh, what information? Where's that come from? Well, in the process of creating this virtual reality, the larger consciousness system needs to create certain databases because it needs to know this information kind of immediately in real time, all the time. So rather than try to look it up and figure out each piece, it creates databases so that it has the information that it needs. All of our virtual realities work like that too. We create big databases that contains the information that we're likely to have that speeds the process up a lot. So there's all this information out there. And that information is all about you and everybody else. It's all the things that possibly could have happened and the probability they would have happened. And then time goes by and it's everything that could have happened and the probability that it would have. And then what actually does happen is just a little thread through that big database. That big database is huge based on probability. It's a big probabilistic database. And what we actually do is just a little thread of our choices that we made that kind of runs through all those possibilities and their probabilities. So all that information is out there. So when you want to know something, should I marry Sally or marry Sue? Well, there's a lot of information that can project probabilities out for as long as you like to give you some information about that. Now, it's not a done deal. We're not talking about, everything's already done. These are just probabilities. But the probabilities can give us insight, and the probabilities can give us a lot of useful information, even though we realize those probabilities might change. Because we can also look at how changeable they are. We can get all the statistics on those probabilities. How much are they likely to change? How solid are they? How much have they changed in the past? All of that's out there too. So you've got this huge database of information. But the tool that you use, instead of this really precise logic over here, this tool is kind of ratty. It's ratty because it depends on you. It depends on your mood. It depends on your attitude. It depends on your understanding. It depends on how much discipline you have created with that mind. Can you sit still, empty that mind, and sit there for an hour with that mind empty, or are thoughts flying through your mind all the time? Well, if thoughts are flying through your mind all the time, then that's just called noise. And it's hard to pull signal out of noise. You never know what you've got. You grab a piece of noise junk or grab a piece of information, and you can't tell the difference. It all looks the same to you because you haven't learned to develop that intuitive side. Now, if you go over and look at the intellectual side, it's really the same sort of thing. If you never learn how to develop that intellectual side, what you would be the proverbial, boy raised by wolves, right? You've never been to school, you've never learned anything. There's no language that you speak. It's all grunts and gestures with your wolf pack. So you wouldn't actually seem too bright either. You'd seem kind of, undeveloped. You'd probably make a lot of real bad choices. You wouldn't be too smart. You wouldn't be able to put things together. you probably wouldn't even be able to find your lost car keys, because you just wouldn't be thinking very straight. So we spend years and years and years and years developing our logical side, our intellectual side. We hone it. We start preschool, and we go kindergarten, and all through school. What we're doing is polishing and honing and expanding that intellectual side, because that's our main tool. That's our ticket, out of wherever it is we're stuck. If we get that mind going, we can get a better job, we can get a better relationship. That just everything gets better if we can get that mind to work. So we work hard at it. And over on the intuitive side, we do nothing. Just like the boy raised by wolves over here, we do nothing at all. So when we are 2 years old and 3 years old, we're much more intuitive than we are when we're 20 and we're 30. We actually lose what we've got. We come in with a fair amount of intuitive ability. And you think just because your 2 and 3-year-old is not good at language yet, that they really don't understand anything? You're wrong. They understand a great deal of what's going on, even nuanced things of what's going on. They can't talk about it, they can't express it, but they understand it much more than you generally give them credit for understanding. And so does your dog understand things that they can't express it to you. Well, they can. They can wag their tail, or they can tuck their tail between their legs. They can express it in a few gestures, but they can't express it, with much detail. So most of us ignore the intuitive side in our culture because we're very left brain dominant. We're all about that logic and all about that intellect, and we really just don't care anything at all about that intuitive side. So we have this one side that's got this beautiful, precise tool and terrible, ratty information, and the other one that's got this beautiful, precise database and kind of a ratty tool to get it with, that you have to discipline and teach and develop, and you have to do a lot of work with it. So where does that leave you? Well, it leaves most people in our culture terribly unbalanced. They've got this huge intellectual side that they've developed for many, many, many years, and they've got this intuitive side that is not even as good as it was when they were 2 years old. It's deteriorated from there. It's almost worthless. It's the gut hunch that is wrong as much as it's right. And for most people, it's actually wrong more than it's right. There's a bias there that actually makes it more, or it's not even 50-50. It's not that good yet. But I have found that not only is it important to develop your intellectual side, it's just as important, if not more important, to develop your intuitive side. And what you need to be is very, very intellectual and very, very intuitive, both. In other words, you need to develop both sides to the maximum ability you have to develop them. That's important. And if you don't develop both sides, you're really missing out on probably 90% of the life that you're living. Is just, all the important stuff is what you're missing. You're not relating to and connecting and being a part of all of that important stuff. Oh, you're real good at finding your lost keys, and you're good at doing math, and you're good at a lot of things. Whatever your job is, you're probably pretty good at your job. But that's all about stuff. That's stuff, right? Your job's about stuff. You do stuff, and it makes stuff go where it needs to go, or you make stuff that other people need, but it's all about the stuff. So on one side, let's bring in like a metaphor of a play. You have the actors who put it on the play, and then you have the props and the backgrounds and that sort of thing. Okay, well, the stuff that you work with over on this intellectual side, that's all about the props and the background. It's all about the stuff that's there. Now, the story and what's going on in this play, That's all about the thoughts, the feelings, the moods, the loves, the hates, the craziness, the whatever.
All valid information
Yeah,
that's not being taken in sometimes by that left brain. That
absolutely. It's about all that stuff
yeah.
going on inside those actors' heads and what they're doing and who they're portraying and what the emotions are and feelings are and why that happened. And it's all this other stuff going on. And that's why people come to the play, not to watch the props. Oh, let's go to this play and watch the props. They've got really good props. I mean, nobody does that. What's interesting, what's moving, what's educational is what the actors bring to the play, the characters that they present and the situations that they represent and so on. That's what's important. So now that is just, take that play and that then open that up and say, that's life. That's your life. Okay. What your intellect brings to it is all about the stuff. Got all your stuff in order? Does your bank account balance? Does this happen? Does that happen? Does Johnny done his homework? It's all the stuff that has to happen. But your relationship with Johnny, now, that's not on that intellectual side. Yeah, whether he did his homework or not, yep, you can tick that off, done his homework. But what about that relationship you have with him? Is that a really good relationship? Are the two of you really close? And do you really, you and him can kind of be with each other and it's meaningful? Or is it just he takes up space in your house and he does homework or doesn't do homework and you pat him on the head or you punish him for not doing it or whatever, and it's just these little pieces that run around in your life. You see, that's the difference. On the intuitive side, you can connect with that boy Johnny and you can feel his feelings. You know where his mind is. You know where his happiness is, where his caring is, the things that upset him and bother him. And it's not that you know him because you're analyzing his behavior. It's because you can be one with him. You can connect with him in a very personal way, understand him, see the fear that's in there and understand where that fear comes from. And then you can help him. You see,
Absolutely. And it's
you
such important information that often goes overlooked in our society for the reasons you just mentioned. And, it's so important that people do take in this additional information, which, as you mentioned, is 90% of what's out there is this intuitive information that can be transmitted in an instant instead of having to be analyzed or thought
uh,
about.
yeah,
And it makes up the basis of our reality. And so refreshing to see this put into perspective that we can understand out here in a left brain oriented society. Uh, Please, yes, continue. That was
yeah.
wonderful.
Well,
Absolutely.
I wrote my books for left brain people. I'm a left brain person. I'm a scientist. I'm still a scientist. It's not like I used to be a scientist. I'm still a scientist. And then I need to, you need logic. Logic and intellect is an important part of you. It's a very important part of you. It's necessary. But the intuitive part is also a very important part of you. And the two work really well together. And what you find that if you develop both sides well, then you find that when you need the logic to step in and be logical, it does. And when you need the intuitive side to gather information and come up with understanding, then it does. And it all just flows together, works together perfectly. And instead of two sides that fight with each other and don't get along, you have two sides that cooperate beautifully, and both of them add their skills and talents to the whole. And now you're a whole person. And I find that what I do, I'd say I probably live 75, 80% of my life out of the intuition. And I live that other 15, 20, 30% of my life out of my intellect. It just depends on what I'm doing. Okay. Now, if I was at work, I'm retired, so I don't go to work every day. So I don't have all that logical stuff I need to be doing every day. So in my situation, my life has shifted over to more intuitive and less intellectual. And that's because I interact with people. I interact with people and their issues and their problems and their fears. And I try to be of use to them. I try to help them understand the bigger reality, the context within which their whole life makes sense, rather than my life. A few of my stuff in my life makes sense, but there's this big jumble over here that doesn't seem to make any sense at all. Once you have the bigger picture, your whole life makes sense, all within a context of understanding it. So I do that. And to do that, I need my intuitive skills more than I need my intellectual skills. So I spend more of my time over on the intuitive side and less on the intellectual side. Now I need to talk to Stu X on the screen here. Well, I need to sound like I know what I'm talking about. If I just go from my right brain, I sound like some busy space cadet that uh, has all these ideas, but they don't make any sense. So then I pull out my intellectual side and I put all of these ideas into an intellectual framework that a logical person can follow and understand and say, oh, okay, I got it. I got two sides. One, you have to develop both sides. That makes sense. I can put it into a thing. And my whole book was written that way. My books were all written for the left brain, analytical logic. Show me the logic, or I can't turn the page. I'm not going to the next page if you're going to say stuff that doesn't make any sense. So my book is made for logical people like myself. And I did that because there's hundreds of on-ramps for people to find out about spirituality, bigger pictures, why we're here, all those things. There's lots of on-ramps for those people. Because for the most people, the people who've had that understanding and talked about it and have written about it, they've done it from the intuitive side, because that's where all that information resides. It's over there on the intuitive side. So you got lots of lots of different ramps that you can take to get on to the big picture. If you're trying to ramp onto the big picture and have a bigger sense of life and existence, then lots of on ramps going for the right brain people. But for the left brain people, for the logical people, not so much. There's very, very little that speaks to logic. Oh, here, the whole answer's right here in this Bhagavad Gita. And the intellectual reads that and he says, okay, there's this guy on a chariot and he's at war, right? What the hell does that have to do with anything important? Take the book, use it as firewood. It doesn't, it's poetry. You have to interpret it. You can interpret it entirely from the intellect. You have to understand what's being said, why it's being said, how it connects to the bigger picture. And I just got a message that your battery's running low. You might want to plug in your PC.
Oh yeah, please, by
I
all
didn't
means.
I didn't know my PC was not plugged in. It seems to be plugged in, so I've
Okay.
got a plug in it and it shows that it's on and that it's got juice. I don't know what that's all about. But anyway, let's just hope it doesn't wink out. If it does, I'll get back to you. Um, anyhow,
Sure. And
anyhow,
feel free to connect the device to the outlet if you need to. No issues. Not a problem. But I mean, it's more than intriguing to listen to someone from that that left brain perspective get into intuition and that intuition side of things as deeply as you have, and to have gained as much wisdom as you have. And it almost seems like, based on what you're saying, it's like as if the right brain intuitive side gathers that information, it takes in all that information, and then this left brain sort of organizes it, as you mentioned, in a framework for that information to be funneled in a particular way. And what we're doing is we're overusing that framework, and we're building things without understanding or having that information come into the framework to actually be processed and utilized. And it's so it's while reading your trilogy, I could tell immediately just how you catered to that that sort of structured way of thinking and
Mm-hmm.
understanding physical reality, but then as to highlight the importance and the value of making sure that you have all the right variables, all the right
Mm-hmm.
data to actually be able to process and to make a decision, as you mentioned, which would take us towards growth and helping that larger consciousness system to evolve and improve its quality. Uh, Beautiful response. So really appreciate that. Absolutely. And if there's anything you want to add to that before we get into our next question, please feel free to.
No, I think that's probably got it. The intuitive side is just very, very important. That's where all the quality comes. That's where the love is. That's where the relationship is. That's where justice is. That's where almost everything that's important in life, that's where it resides. That intellectual side now appreciates all those things and can order them and can build them and can work with them, but they basically exist over on the intuitive side. And
Just so, would you like to add anything additional to what we were discussing earlier about taking in information from the intuitive uh, part of our perception, our right brain, as folks would call it, and then have that in harmony with our usage of our left brain? Um,
no,
is there anything else you'd like to
no,
add to that
I
before we
think
move
I
on?
about had that wound up.
Okay.
Basically, I was saying that most people are they go through life as intellectual adults and maybe I don't know, not even as good as 2-year-olds as far as their intuitive side goes. And the one comment I would make is that with development, if you do develop that intuitive side, you will find out that it is actually more accurate and more reliable than your intellectual side. And that's generally because you don't have all the data you need. But typically, if you're even just working on even a logical problem, you'll find that the intuitive side is very reliable. You always get information when you ask, and the information is always accurate. The accuracy is great. The reliability is great. And I would say, from my experience, it's better than the intellectual side. But now, most people probably wouldn't find that because they haven't taken 35 years to develop their intuitive side. But in general, I think that almost anybody with, I don't know, a decade of developing their intuitive side would probably find the intuitive side to be more accurate and more reliable than the intellectual side. The intellectual side is not always reliable because the information you have may not always be reliable. It's not only that you might not have the information, but the information you think is reliable isn't. And that's where we get stuck because we have these things called beliefs. And those beliefs just give us a ton of wrong information, unreliable information. Now, you'll have people say, well, I don't have any beliefs. Yes, you have beliefs about everything. You have beliefs about, what your child is thinking, about what your spouse is thinking, and how they feel. And you get all kinds of beliefs about the world, about the way your boss sees you. You don't, you think you know how the boss sees you, but you don't really because you don't know what's going on in the boss's head. If you're intuitive, you do know what's going on in the boss's head, and you can know what the boss thinks of you. But the information that you come up with, that you stuff into that intellectual logic machine, is often biased, wrong, slanted. It's twisted in many ways. So the answer you get out is often twisted. So yes, the information I get from these data sources is never twisted. It's always just the information I asked for. And now sometimes I have to ask again, or I have to say, well, it's, like any, it's just like doing query on a big database. You very often don't get what you want on the first query. You look at what you get on the first query, and then you refine your query. So let me find a keyword that is not used by everybody to mean everything. Let me find one that's more unique, and do the query on that way. Well, this database is like that too. So sometimes it takes 3 and 4 requests before you narrow your query down to exactly what you want and the statistics that you want, the error bars you want on the results and all the rest of it. That may take a little practice, a little time to do, but it's always right. I've never had my intuition, lead me into something that was just false. I can depend on that. Now, I've had my intellect lead me into things that I thought I understood, but my understanding really wasn't the way it was. And that's particularly true in relationships, because you think you understand how another person is thinking, but we tend to mirror ourselves and everybody else. In other words, we think that significant other, sitting across the table, that they see the world the same way we see the world, and there's just one reality, and we all see the same reality, and that's just not true. That significant other over there, if it's a different sex than you, then they see reality differently than you do. And to make an assumption that the reality they see is the same reality as you is a mistake, and it creates a whole lot of problems in relationships just because of that mistake. They say old women are from Venus, men are from Mars, kind of a viewpoint, but that's a very valid viewpoint. And so with your children. And even your dog. If you really want to understand these things, you need to meet them in intuitive space and connect with them there. And that intuitive space is a space where all those kinds of details settle out. And there's just a lot of things that you can do there. But let me stop here and go on with the next question, or we'll be too long here.
No, absolutely, and thank you for that that thorough, understanding of the importance and significance of that sort of perception. And it actually leads into my next question for you, which is actually a quote that I wanted to bring up of yours. In your second book, the My Big Toe trilogy, you wrote something which really stuck out to me, and I quote, "Interpreting your experience can be tricky if the quality of your consciousness is low," end quote. In a world that's hell-bent on using cookie-cutter rules and methods and treatments across the board without, as you mentioned actually earlier, addressing each situation as the unique one that it is, can you elaborate on the significance of interpreting one's reality as clearly as possible and get into how one can develop the clarity of perception to be able to interpret one's own reality as clearly as possible?
Yes, that takes some work. None of this is free, right? And you don't take a pill and magically have all this down. Even if you think you do, that's an illusion. That's not true. Drugs can blast you into the space, but they can't give you the knowledge and the experience you need to actually use that space for something valuable. Where you can get blasted into a space with a drug and, oh, wow, that's amazing, and that I see all these things, and it suddenly makes sense, but you're not really a different person. Because just by seeing something amazing or spiritual or even fundamental and massive and whatever doesn't change you. You have to change yourself, and you can only do that with an intention. So you can see all the, you can read all the spiritual books. You can read my book 10 times. You can read, do and go places and, do rituals and do drugs. You can do all those kinds of things. And none of that will make you a spiritual person. You'll able to talk the talk, and sound like a spiritual person sometimes if you're trying, but it doesn't actually help you grow up any. The way you grow up is you realize that you're acting out of fear, then you learn to let go of the fear and become love instead of the fear. That's growing up. Growing up is not a matter of knowledge. It's a matter of wisdom. It's a matter of understanding the patterns in that knowledge. It doesn't come just by reading books. You have to live it and do it and become it. And then slowly it begins to sink in and your understanding becomes testable. Where you can, I'm a scientist. I test everything. You have to test everything. So back to your question, the first thing that you have to realize is that you get a data stream. Okay, you're a piece of consciousness. You're logged on to an avatar. You get a data stream. Now, that data stream then has to be interpreted. You have to interpret it. You can only interpret it from your past experience. If you've never had any experience in an area that you're getting data, then that won't make any sense to you at all. So you interpret the data you get. What does it mean? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? What am I tasting? You have to interpret that based on past experience, which means you interpret it based on your fear, on your expectations, on your hopes, on your dreams, on your knowledge, on your wisdom. All of those things go into interpreting that. Now, the one that will trick you most is you interpret it according to your beliefs. If you have beliefs, and everybody has beliefs, and nobody thinks they have beliefs, because when you believe something, that's no longer a belief, it's a fact. In your mind, all those things you believe aren't beliefs, they're facts. Indeed, most of them are not facts. Most of them are not facts. I call this, the simple knowledge. You see it as knowledge, but it's really not knowledge at all. It's just belief. And people have lots of beliefs about how other people see the world. Now, the second thing that you have to realize, so one, you get data, but it's just your interpretation. Now, that interpretation you make of that data is your reality. That is your reality. And everybody else also is making their choices. They're getting information too. They're getting data streams. And they're having to look at those data streams and come up with what it means to them. And that is their reality. And then you realize that everybody lives in their own reality. Now, there are some shared aspects to it, right? You can see that I'm wearing a blue shirt. And, I see I'm wearing a blue shirt, so we both agree on that. That's like a common aspect here. But that's because we both live in realities where blue shirts are not all that uncommon. We know how to interpret that. So I can interpret it, and you can interpret it, and that's the way it is. But
I was going to say there's some cultures where the color or the word for blue and green are actually the same, and so they see blue and green as essentially the same color. So
there's all kinds of things that in the way there, yes. But we agree, and most people from our culture would agree, things like that, because they're common. So, we believe we live in the same reality. We're in a reality where I'm wearing a blue shirt, and that's just this reality is a fixed thing out there. But it isn't a fixed thing. Your reality is just your interpretation of the information. And we come from similar cultures, therefore, we have a lot of things that we can say in common. This is the table, this is the chair, this is firewood, and we'll look at all that stuff and we'll go, that's right, that's what those things are. But you take that to some other culture that doesn't have those objects in it, and it's entirely different. They may see the table and the chair and the firewood is all the same. It's all firewood. They may not see any difference there because they don't do tables and chairs, but they do firewood. So it's everybody lives in their own reality. Now, that reality is determined by your beliefs. It's determined by your misinformation. It's determined by your past. You've learned to interpret things certain ways. So you grow up in a household where your parents fight fuss with each other all the time, and you grow up and you figure this whole idea about love and sharing and whatever is just the thing you write about. It's the stories that doesn't really exist, because you've never seen it. It's not. You've seen people pretending, and you've got friends that have terrible relationships. So you see that, but you're you don't really believe that that's a real thing because it's not part of your reality. And because of that, you have a problem giving. You have a problem giving anything of yourself. You tend to be a taker. You tend to be a user because that's that's the reality you've grown up in. So, you see, these are just beliefs. So, people look at, they think they live in this one reality that's shared. We all live in the same reality. We all agree on things. Well, we agree on a lot of things. But most all the things that are important, again, over there on that intuitive side, we agree about all the props. All right, we're in the play. We've watched the play. It was really moving. It was dramatic. We all can agree. Yeah, okay, there was a prop. There was a chair. There was a bed. There was a wall. That was a castle. We all agree on the props. But do we agree on what went on in the play and who did what to do or why? And what does that mean? And what's the significance of it? And what does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? What are my takeaways from that? No, we all disagree about all of that. Well, which is more important? Our takeaway from the play, the actors, or what was said and done, or the props? So it's back to that same old thing again. So where we agree, and we say, yeah, this world's just a fixed world. Well, we're mostly talking about the props. Where we disagree is where life is lived, for the most part. That's where relationships live. That's where love and caring and, children and mothers and fathers and, all the stuff that's important and significant lives in that side that you don't really understand. And you do have a lot of beliefs about it. That's what makes your relationship difficult, because you don't really understand it, and you've got these beliefs that in your mind are facts, and somehow those facts just don't play well. But honey, here are the facts. The fact that. My Ronnie just doesn't buy that. She just doesn't give a damn about those facts because she's got other facts inside that telling her something else. So that's the point. So yes, we all live in our own personal reality. There is no overall reality. We're all playing in a virtual reality. Yes, okay, the virtual reality has a tall building in New York City. Used to have a couple more tall buildings in New York City, and we can read about that in history books. So we have that. Yes, but the important stuff isn't the set again. It's the rest of it, and we struggle with reality all the time because we want everybody else to see the world the way we see it. The way most people think is that there's two ways of doing anything. There's my way and the wrong way. Those are the two ways of seeing a problem. So if everybody would just, do it the way is the right way for it to do it, all the problems in the world would be solved and we'd all be happy and live happily ever after. But that isn't true either. There's a lot of people that can't do it your way. Your way's not even in their set of possibilities. Just like sometimes their way is not in your set of possibilities. You just couldn't do that. But yet we think everybody sees the same world that we see and lives in the same world we live in, and it's just not true. So that's just the key idea to understand that we interpret data. How we interpret it is personal. And yes, some things are shared, but the stuff that matters most is not shared and is hidden. And you can intuit it a lot more accurately than you can intellectually ferret it out.
Absolutely. No, beautifully said. It's so important to see the perspectives that make up the experiences, the collective experiences of humanity and the greater consciousness system. And I think it's wonderful how you shed light on the importance of understanding that there is no one objective, clear reality that we can easily interpret in any sort of way, but instead they're experiences, and those experiences are based off of various types of inputs, as well as, like you said, beliefs and assumptions, and a lot of other created internal structures that have, been sitting around for however long, and it's up to us to really address those and work on that intuitive side.
Right.
Back to what you were saying earlier, so we can really look into someone and see what they might be perceiving, what their experience of life might be, and then based off that, do what is best for the situation, as well as a collective, and yourself as a part of that collective.
Right.
Also,
and realize that you don't always have an answer. One of the when you work in the intuitive realm, you can get information through three sources. You can get information from the large conscious system in data stream. You can get information from some other individuated unit of consciousness like you, and you can get information from yourself. Your piece of consciousness. You can also create information, okay? But you don't have a tag on which information is which. You just get it all as information. So you may think, oh, that's straight from the larger conscious system, and it may be something you're just making up completely, coming out of your own imagination, purely. Or, you may be getting from other people, particularly if you're close to other people. You can get. So there's uncertainty. And that's another fundamental of our reality is you have to learn to live with uncertainty. And when we are being intuitive and we're trying to understand the problem, one of the things you have to always be open to is that your understanding of it may be totally wrong. Your understanding of it may be wrong. Okay? There's always uncertainty that you did it right. Because again, you get that information, comes from the larger conscious system, you add your stuff to it. Comes from somebody else, you add your stuff to it. Comes from yourself, and you also add stuff to it. So there's a lot of uncertainty in life. And the person you need to be most uncertain about and most skeptical of is yourself. When you say, oh, well, I see your problem. Yeah, I can read the tea leaves and I can get the intuitive and I see exactly what your problem is. Well, that would be foolish to believe that. I don't see your problem. I see maybe more into your problem, into your depths, into your thinking, maybe even than you do. But to think that I know everything about you is wrong. I don't know everything about you. I only know some of the very specific stuff I ask. And if I ask stuff that the system thinks is not legitimate, too personal, I won't get it. Or I'll get something else that it just slides in there instead. So, or if the system thinks that I'm being too cocky and I'm too sure of myself and think I get everything right, they may just throw me a curveball, an absolutely wrong answer, and say, Tom, what you need to do is take a very long walk off this very short pier, and if I end up all wet, I say, I think the system was trying to tell me something. It's a correction I lead. So you never know for sure exactly. You can't say, that you know things through 1,000 decimal places. This is true. So one should always be skeptical of everything, including of yourself. And you should take very, very few times should you ever take any information and make it a 1, probability of 1. In other words, a fact that is going to remain a fact, or a 0 that, it is wrong, absolutely wrong. Can't be that way. Very few things in your experience should ever warrant a 1 or a 0. Most everything should be somewhere in the middle. I mean, you might hear something or if somebody may be trying to explain something to you, you may say, hey, I give that about a 0.0001. That's not much. But don't give it a 0, because you may find more information later starts to make that position more and more tenable as you think about it. You don't have all the information. You're not omnipotent, and you always have to realize that you're understanding the things you get even out of the database. Some of that could be coming from you, because you may be asking a question or asking for information for which you have fear, or you have buttons or things surrounding that information yourself, and now it's going to come out all twisted because there's part of you that's twisted around that same similar kind of thing. So it's not that the intuitive side is all just pure and perfect and always correct unless you are pure and perfect. In other words, unless you've gotten rid of all your fear. Now, if you've gotten rid of all of your fear, then your understanding is almost always going to be correct.
And how does one do that?
Very few people achieve that point where they get rid of all of their fear. It's not a simple space to be. You achieve it. I mean, the simple thing is to become aware of it. Most people are not aware, but if they just think about one thing, if they want to know how they're doing in this overall thing we're talking about, well, where do I rate? Because people want to compare themselves to others, which is useless, but they want to do that anyway. So they want to know, how am I doing? Where's my scorecard? What you have to do is just look back at your experience for the last week. You want to be able to have a pretty good memory of every day of the previous week. Go through every day, everything you did, everything you felt, and see if you felt anything that would be called negative. Negative means you felt annoyed. Stress is negative. You felt stress and difficult coping. You think that you weren't well understood. People are, misinterpreting what you're saying, and they don't understand. That upsets you. That bothers you, because they are going off and attributing things to you that not what you intended. You find anger. You find angst. You find, feeling not given your due, undervalued. All of these things are negative. They're negative feelings. They're not positive feelings. The positive feelings are joy, peace, happiness, satisfaction, love. Those are all positive things. And if you feel stressed, annoyed, aggravated, upset, if any of that's been in your last week, you've got fears. You would feel that if you didn't have fear. And then start looking at each choice you make and see whether that choice is a fear-based choice or whether it's just an honest choice coming out of your consciousness, your conscious awareness. So the fear is making the choice. So somebody comes up and they insults you. They say, Stu, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're just wasting everybody's time. And if you immediately get defensive, wait a minute, who the hell are you to tell me that? What do you understand, if you get defensive? If it bothers you, if you get upset, if that's really annoying, that jerk thinks he knows everything, or any of that, then you've got fear. You got fear where you can say, well, yeah, okay, I got angry, but George made me angry or Susie made me angry. Nobody can make you angry. Anger is a choice of how you respond to something. It's always a choice. Nobody can make you feel anything. What's inside your mind will how you feel. It's all yours, and you need to own it. So if somebody says something that you find upsetting, it makes you angry, feel like it's being unfair, it's this and that, all of those things are negative things. And I know people will say, well, that's just normal. I mean, that's just being human. Well, it is normal, but it's not human nature. Human nature can be better than that. Human nature can be such that if somebody insults you, instead of being angry, you realize, boy, they're having a bad day. They're angry. They're upset. They've got all kinds of negative stuff going on. They don't know 100% anything I can do to help. They don't take it personally because you know it's not personal. All of that anger coming from that person has nothing to do with you. You can't make that person angry. They're angry because inside they're expressing fear. That's why they're angry. So if it doesn't have anything to do, why should you get upset about it? See? Well, only because you have fear too. Now they've triggered one of your buttons. And believe it or not, if you get rid of your fears, you start making much better choices. Because it's those fears that lead you to make. Most people think most of their choices because of their fear. And actually, I'd say it's not them making the choice so much as their fear makes the choice. They avoid this because it bothers them, it upsets them, they don't like that. They do this, because if they don't, there'll be a problem. And so it's the fear that's motivating. They don't do this because it'll be fun and I want to do this and it'll be helpful. They do things because they think they have to. They should. I have to do this because the boss told me I have to, or they have to do whatever the boss says. Whatever. So we do things because we're afraid of what happens if we don't. Right? Well, we have to live within constraints. Yes, we do have bosses. And some bosses can tell us what, but if a boss tells you something that's completely irrational or wrong or hurtful or unethical, you can always come back and check with the boss. Are you sure you meant that? Because, that's unethical. Or that's just going to cause more trouble for these reasons. And if the boss says go do it anyway, well, then you can check with the boss's boss and see if that's the case. And if you're being demanded to do things that are unethical, well, you need to start looking for another job. That's not a place to be. So it all works out. It all works out in the end if you just care about people. Care about people a lot more than you, and you go put yourself. It's not all about you. But when somebody insults you, it's all about you. That person just said these horrible things about me, and I got to defend myself. That's because of the fear you have. If you don't have that fear, you don't have to defend yourself because they actually didn't say anything about you. Yes, you were mentioned, but it was all about them. They tell you a whole lot about where their mind is, what they're thinking. It really wasn't about you at all. So these are just some big picture attitudes that you get as you grow up. You take on these big picture attitudes. You stop seeing things in the little picture. The little picture where, the fears playing with fears. You get a bigger picture. And as you get a bigger picture, a lot of the small stuff just drops away. It's just not interesting anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. You lose those buttons where people could push your buttons before the buttons kind of fall off. And you don't have those buttons anymore. And the bigger the picture you get, the more you find peace in your life and satisfaction. The more you make choices because you think about them and you think they're low entropy choices. They're good choices. They're love-based choices. And no, being loving, being caring does not make you everybody's doormat. It's just the opposite. When you're a person who loves and cares deeply, that gives you power. People come to you and talk to you and confide in you because you're non-judgmental. They listen to you when you give them advice because they can trust you because you're non-judgmental and you have humility. You're not trying to run your life or tell them what to do. You're just helping them maybe see a bigger picture so they can make a decision. You know, that other high-quality person isn't going to tell you what to do. Even if you beg them to tell you what to do, they're not going to tell you what to do. They're going to help you see the problem in such a way that you can make a better choice. But they'll never tell you what to do. And if they start telling you what to do, they're not nearly as wise as you think they are. They're just giving you a line of BS that suits them. So that's just life in general. You know, you grow up as you grow up and you drop your fear. You get rid of your fear because you recognize the fear. You see the fear and you don't want to be that way. And I must stress a point here. It's not that you don't act, negative. I'm not talking about being really good actors here. We're talking about being really good people. It's not that you act kind. It's that you be kind. It's not that you act with a smile on your face always, but that smile is genuine and comes from deep inside of you. It's not pasted on there because you've decided that you're too negative. So you're just going to smile when you feel like slapping somebody, you're going to smile at them. That doesn't help you grow. It makes life more civilized for everybody. Yes, a good actor can make life civilized, more civilized around them, but it doesn't help you grow in it.
Right. If anything, adds to that internal conflict where you're trying to push yourself in one direction, but internally you're trying to take yourself where it's, most, probabilistic to go to.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. It's so significant to be genuine with oneself, so that one can see which direction he's in and whether or not that adjustment needs to take place, in which direction that adjustment needs to take place as well.
Right. And then you test it. You say, well, I'm going to try not to be upset when these things happen. I'm going to try to see these people differently, rather than saying, you damn fools, all you people, you're the problem in the world. If you could just understand something about reality, the problems would be a lot better. You guys are the problems. Well, you're pointing your finger at other people, blaming other people, and they feel the same way about you. They blame their fingers at you. You're the problem. You just don't understand. You see? So pointing fingers isn't helpful. Being angry at other people because of the way they are isn't helpful. They are the way they are because that's the level of quality they have attained at this point. And they may not have grown up very much, even in the last 50 lifetimes. They may be that same person they were because they haven't taken any of it seriously yet. You start to grow up more quickly once you realize what's the point of this life. Why are we here? There's a reason why we're here. And you heard me say it earlier. We're here to make good choices and increase the quality of our consciousness, decrease our fear. That's why we're here, become love. And if you're not engaged in that, then you're not paying attention to the game. You're wandering around clueless in the playing field, having no idea what the hell is going on or why it's going on that way. And you don't learn much. You kind of repeat and repeat and repeat. So it takes an intention to see a big enough picture where you can see yourself being negative and then not wanting to be that way, not wanting to act that way, but not wanting to be that way. And to have a strong enough intention to not be that way that after some months of trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing, but then failing less often and failing less often until you get rid of that fear. And now you don't have that fear anymore. Then life is lighter. The load you carry is nearly as heavy. And in general, life is better. More fun, less stress, more happiness, less struggle. And that's just the way it goes. And you get rid of that fear one at a time. And I tell people, don't pick the biggest, ugliest fear you've got to work on first. Pick something that's a little smaller, something that's still a negative thing. It's a fear, but it's not that you fundamental, because if you pick your hardest thing first, you may give up in the middle saying this is impossible. But if you pick some smaller fears and you succeed, you'll know that you can succeed. And just with that knowledge will give you confidence, and that confidence will see you through those tough ones where the fear is deep. Because when you were 5 years old, you didn't get the teddy bear, but your little brother and sister did. And ever since then, you felt inadequate and not loved or appreciated. Now you're 50 years old, and you still feel unloved and not appreciated, but you have no idea why. Well, Mom just thought you didn't do teddy bears anymore because you were 2 or 3 years older, and she thought you were done with teddy bears. But it really wasn't the teddy bear. It was getting something that was important, and you didn't get anything. You see? So little things like that, as far as Mom and Dad are concerned, little trivial things that happen can be a really big thing in your life, and that can be very hard to get over. That feeling of inadequacy, feeling not being good enough, of being found wanted, and not being acceptable. It can rule all your relationships because you'll feel that way in your relationships. It'll rule, even what you do at work because you'll feel that way at work. It'll be a basic part of you that you are just have that fear. And that will make you unhappy and make you miserable. And when people say something like, well, you got that wrong, didn't you, Stu? Oh, this anger boils up because they've just pushed a button of yours, which is just, you're not good enough. And they just pointed out a fact where you're not good enough, and it triggers that button, and you not only get upset, but you get angry. Well, that anger is just because somebody just triggered a fear that resonated with you. That's why you get angry. They said something about you that you fear is true of yourself. That's what makes you angry. It's not really what they said that makes you angry. It's what happens inside of you with your fear that makes you angry. Again, they don't make you angry. It's a choice you have. But it's not an easy choice to make if you've got this stuff that's very deeply embedded, and it may take years to work it off. But you can always succeed if you really want to. And don't make excuses and blame things on other people. Own up to everything that happens in your life. Everything that's negative. Everything that's great. Own it. It's yours. You've created it. The sum total of all the choices you've ever made are you right now. That's the sum total. You're an expression of that total of all the choices you've made. You start making some better choices, and you'll get a better result. I mean, it's just that simple. So these things are easy to talk about, but a lot harder to do. But you can do them.
Absolutely.
If you put your mind to it and you really want to.
Absolutely. And you hit some, amazing points there. One of which has to do with, it seems like you're mentioning, keeping yourself in a conscious state, especially internally, so you understand, what you're creating. So as far as fear is concerned, you're almost thinking about, avoiding something. So you're creating an aversion to something, and what you're essentially doing is you're, by focusing on that aversion, creating it, sometimes manifesting it in your life instead.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
One of the things that I personally have been more mindful of is that internal state that I'm creating, not just these physical conscious actions that we're making on an active level, but on a more subtle level. What's that internal environment that's stirring up in your system, and what is that really attracting? And just by kind of looking into this, and kind of understanding that we're essentially manifesting all the time. As you mentioned, you're the product of your choices.
Yes.
And not just your external choices, but your internal choices.
Absolutely, all of your choices. And it's more than that. And that is, I haven't mentioned this yet, but your intention modifies those future probabilities. There's all those future probabilities. Here's all the things that can happen, but there's uncertainty around all of those. And your intention will change that uncertainty, make this less probable, this more probable. And yes, if you have that negativity, if you have those fears, you will manifest those fears. You'll make them come true. All the things that scare you the most are going to fall right out in front of you and go boom, because you're creating them, because you're putting mental energy, we can call it that. That's not it, but you're putting intent into the consciousness system. Now, the system gave us that as feedback. How we're in this virtual reality, how are we doing? What's the feedback? Well, we can actually, in some ways, create the reality that's being fed to us. We have input to it. It's not just the larger conscious system decides what it's going to send us and sends it to us. We have feedback in what gets sent to us, and we can modify those probabilities. And that is a very powerful thing. That's how healing is done. That's how mental healing is done. That's how the placebo effect works, is that you modify, the probable future. That's how people heal. If somebody takes your headache away, they just use their intent that in the near future, the headache won't be there. And now the probability that headache won't be there just went up. And the probability that it will be there just went down. And if they can do it sufficiently, then that's where its headache's gone away. So that's true no matter what's going on. But you can change things. And miracles happen all the time. And it has to do with mind. The physicians are always amazed at the miracles that can happen. Oh, this person's got stage 4 cancer. It's spread all through their body. They've got, 6 weeks to live. And that person turns up 2 weeks later, cancer-free. How did that happen? Well, it doesn't happen often, but it happens. And it happened because that person changed something in here when they found out that news. They changed the way they interacted with the world. They changed and knew it as they wanted to be. There was a big growth moment for them. That's what happened. So you can modify that future probability with your intent. And another point to make there is that when you look at this nasty world we live in, all the fighting and the warring and the greed and everybody kind of trying to bully everybody else to get what they want, and you say, wow, that is really a mess. Guess what? That is an absolutely accurate reflection of the quality of consciousness of humanity. That's where we are. And until that average quality of consciousness of humanity goes up, that won't change. That bad dictator, that crooked politician, all of those bad actors that you think are ruining the rest of us, they're just symptoms. They're symptoms of a general low quality of consciousness in which they share. And that bad actor, even if you erase them, take them out, somebody else eventually, just like them, is going to return to that position because that's what we serve up. That's who we are. So look at the world. Look at the world for all the written history we have. What has it been? Fighting, warring, aggression, people trying to take away stuff they want from other people who have it. That's greed. That's been a theme running in humanity for a long time. We haven't outgrown it yet. It's still there, and it'll be there tomorrow and a millennia from now if we don't outgrow it. And it's not that we haven't found the perfect form of government, the perfect form of economics that'll let everybody live peacefully together. That's not it. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Take any form of economics or government you want and populate it with people of a high quality of consciousness, and it'll work perfectly. It will meld. It will change itself to be exactly what it needs to be. It'll change all by itself. You won't have to do anything. It'll just That guy who's up there being greedy or whatever, just won't be greedy anymore because isn't supported by the human population. You'll change. So that's the that's the idea. This world is just as raunchy as we are, and to blame it on these people or those people, go look in the mirror because you need some of the blame too. You've been feeding it from your side. When you shake your fist at those stupid people who are screwing up for everybody else, your anger, your upset, your negativity is helping create the problem. You're part of the problem. They're part of the
I
problem.
believe,
You're part of the problem. Almost everybody's part of the problem. That's why the problem is so big. What you need to do is stop doing that and start doing things that are positive, not negative. Stop telling people what they need to be and how they need to think and so on, and start doing things that are positive.
you know, you just shed light on, you know, the vast significance of attention and using it properly to create the world that we want to see.
Sure.
And it's so, intriguing to realize just how powerful attention is. And by using it properly, we are creating our internal states and therefore creating the external world that we see around us, as well as the interactions that we have on a day-to-day basis. As you said, regardless of these structures that really we don't even interact with on a day-to-day basis that are set for us politically or economically, it's really up to us as to how we conduct ourselves and how we interact with each other and understand the situation as a whole. And and with the right intent, as you mentioned, being in our heart centers, taking us closer towards liberation, unity, and joy. And could continue to speak to you for many more hours here. Just I could pick your brains for the rest of the day. But we're coming up on time here, and I just want to
Well, how are we doing?
first of all,
How are we doing on the eight questions? How many of them have we done?
I kid you not, you went through the questions, pretty much every single one of them, without me even having to ask you certain questions. I mean, it was from everything from making low entropy decisions to the importance of compassion, being in our heart centers, to eliminating fear, which was the seventh question, get to the current state of the world that we're in and what people can do to actually improve themselves. My exact number, the eighth question was, given the current state of the world, what would be your words of advice for humanity? So you literally, without even me asking these questions, intuitively, seemingly picked up on it and answered them all.
Well, let me answer that last one then, because we were kind of on.
Yes, please.
We were kind of on that. When there's something very important that I haven't said, and that is, once you realize the quality of consciousness is the problem, and once you realize that you can't change anybody but yourself, because the change we're talking about isn't a change in behavior, it's a change in the internal state of being. You can only change yourself. Matter of fact, if you try to change somebody else, you generally get the opposite result, because most people being push back. Most people with issues double down on their issues when they're being pushed. So typically you generate the opposite of what you're trying to generate by trying to change other people from a position of force, from a position of demanding. So that comes to then the conclusion. If you can only change yourself, then what is the optimal contribution that you can provide to making the world a better place? And the answer is, start growing yourself up toward becoming love. That's what you can do. There isn't anything else you can do that'll matter any more than that. That is your optimal contribution. almost everything else you think of that you could do. Oh, if I were master of the universe, I would change this and I would change that, and I'd get all rid of these people. I'd make this place really nice and inhabitable, and everybody would live happily ever after, and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work at all. First time you tried to move these people over there, they pushed back, and everything would end up in chaos. Yes, and you'd say, but I have a bigger army than anybody else's. I could make it. All you'd end up is more high entropy, more chaos, more violence, and you would create attitudes that would run deep enough that generations would still be coming up with that negativity generations later. That doesn't work. The most optimal thing that you could do, even if you were the master of the universe, would be to get your own mind clear, to get rid of your fears, to care, cooperate, work with. When you interact with people, ask, well, how can I help? What can I do? Not what's in it for me, and how can I get what I want? It's about service. It's about caring. And not about acting that part, but about actually being that part. And if you can do that, then the world will be a better place. And the reason is that all the people around you will begin to get a little better just because of you being there. You will be a positive force in helping them deal with their fears and with their anger. So you will help others around you who will help others around them, who will help others around you. And that's the thing we call collective consciousness. Collective consciousness just, it does rub off. Your thoughts, all of us, all the time, when we interact with people, we don't only interact with language and with body language, we also interact intuitively with people. We're speaking, we're having conversations telepathically all the time with people. There's a kind of a, if you take a group that sees themselves as a group, sees themselves, okay, I belong to this group. Well, when you feel like you belong to that group, you basically become a part of that collective consciousness. Now, as one individual, you don't move that collective consciousness that much, probably. It tends to move you more. So, back in the 1960s, you worked at IBM, well, you would wear a white shirt. Or and a bow tie, or a necktie, or a hat, or whatever it was that everybody else wore. Because that was the collective consciousness. And that's what people wore then. All the fashion was collective consciousness. All fads are collective consciousness. Why do people line up at stores at 5 o'clock in the morning to buy a Beanie Baby? Because the collective consciousness is excited about Beanie Babies. That's why, and you're a part of it, and you're excited about them too. No, it's not rational, but there it is. So there you are, because your wife or your little girl needs one. So all of that stuff, has to do with collective consciousness. The Jungian philosophy about archetypes. Archetypes are basically collective consciousness. And archetypes are, everywhere at the human level, at the state level, at the country level, at the family level. They can find these. It's just ways of thinking and being that we come to collectively because of the group that we're in. So if you become more enlightened and get rid of your fear, you start a little bit of collective consciousness going on around you, and other people are pulled that direction as well. And they pull other people in that direction. So yes, this is catching. So, if you want to do something and affect the rest of the world, again, the most effective you can be is get your own head on straight, get rid of your fears, and you will affect more people in a more positive way than you probably ever could any other way. Maybe you're a skilled orator or a skilled writer or an artist or somebody that can move masses. Well, fine, do that. But that's not a, those are exceptions. The rule is you do your waste good for the most people by fighting and getting rid of your own fears. That's the ultimate place that you're supposed to be going. That's why you're here. That's why you've logged on to play this sabotage. It's because of the challenging choices, ethical choices, moral choices, caring choices, choices based on self-centeredness or on caring for others. You get to make those choices. And by those choices, hopefully, if you make good choices, well, the whole system will evolve. Because the large intelligence system is not a separate thing from you. You're a part of it. It's part of you. Think of it if you're into computer technology. It's like a little subcomputer inside a bigger computer. We call that a virtual machine. It's like a virtual machine. Here you are running an instance of, Stu X, and I'm running one of Thomas Campbell. We're logged on to that. And so I'm a piece of consciousness. And now I'm playing this game to make choices. But I'm really just a piece of this larger system. I'm a part of that system. And as I evolve, it evolves because we're all one thing. So that's the way it is. But nobody can pull you up. Nobody can say, okay, I'm going to get rid of your fears for you. It doesn't work that way. You have to do the work. You can't grow up by reading books. You can't grow up by, listening to people like Stu and I talk. You've got to take that information, use it, turn it into changing your life. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. You can listen to all that stuff all day long, and it's not going to make a damn bit of difference, other than you can sound like you're better than you are. And that's not really a big step forward. You have to look at it and say, how does this apply to me? How many times in the last week did I feel or do or say something that was negative? Most people will say, I don't have to look for a week. I can look at the last, let me inspect the last 3 hours, and I'll probably find something there that was a negative feeling. But then it's simple. From the big picture, everything is so simple. Just be love. How do you solve the problem? Just be love. It's so simple. Now, when you get down to doing it, that's not that simple. It's a lot harder. You really have to want to get something done. Your intent changes the probabilities. So even if you don't do anything else other than just want to, you'll get there. If that want to is from the intuition, because a want to from the intellect has little to no power at all. If the intellect says, oh, I see it, I see that bigger picture, I should become more loving, and it's all in your intellect, nothing's going to happen. That's not where you change. We're talking about change at the being level, who you are at the core of your being, not who you think you are in your sense of your own image that you have about yourself. That's acting. Your image can act better or worse, but we're not talking about your image and its ability as an actor. We're talking about you have to change who you are. And the way you know that you're being successful is that you aren't the same anymore. Those things that used to upset you, don't. The things that used to annoy you, don't. And when you meet people and see people, you tend to think, how can I be of help? What is it that they need that I could help? How can I be of service? Right? That's why Stu's here. Stu's here, getting this information, getting these things, talking to people, putting it up there because he's come to the point that he wants to be part of the solution. And this is being part of the solution. So there's lots of things you can do. You don't just, go in a hole, meditate, and pull it in. It's not that. You need to interact with the world. Your love needs to be demonstrated. It needs to be who you really are. It's easy to become a hermit, live in a cave, and in your own mind, you're nearly godlike. You're perfect. You never hurt anybody. You don't even step on bugs. You're just fantastic. But it's totally different. You get to the same position when you live with a lot of people. When you have husbands and wives and children and jobs and all of that. None of that prevents you from growing up. All of that will help you grow up if you change your attitude, and instead of trying to control it, you decide to serve it. That's what most people, it's the way they meet life. They ask people, what's life about? Well, they say, stuff happens, and you've got to control it and manipulate it and make it be as best you can the way you want it. So it comes out right, because the way you want it, of course, is right. But that's not what life's about at all. You got the first part right. Stuff happens. And now you get to deal with it. And if you deal with it with positivity and with love, you'll evolve and you'll grow up and your life will change and you'll be a happy person, fulfilled, and helping the rest of the world grow up. If you deal with it badly, you'll just be another part of the problem. But stuff happens. You don't try to manipulate it. You let it be. It happens the way it happens. Now deal with it. You don't have to make this happen, make that happen. The harder you try to make things be the way you want, the more scrambled everything gets. You get frustrated. Can't get the kids to do their homework. Can't get the husband to do this. Can't get the wife to do that. Can't get my boss to see that this is a bad idea. One of these things can happen. I'm trying to make them all happen because I know that's best. But it's just not working. Of course it's not working. You're part of the problem of why it's not working. You're trying to manipulate other people to be the way you think is best. Well, what you think is best is good for you. We do what's best for you and do that. Stop thinking about what's best for everybody else to do, how everybody else should live their lives, and what they should do and how they should do it, and the attitudes they should have. Just think about you. And let them be however they are. And if they're cantankerous and full of high entropy, well, that's just the level of quality of consciousness they've reached to this point. You can't force them to listen. You can't force them to change. You can't change them. What you can do is stop interacting with all that fear stuff with them. You can get out of the dance that you're dancing with those people. Instead of dancing with them, instead of interacting with them, instead of being part of that general melee of crap that's around us all the time, instead of being a part of that, you're just not a part of that anymore. So you let them be. What's the well? You don't feel some passion for them. They're miserable. They're unhappy. They're making themselves unhappy, and they don't even know it. They don't know how to stop making themselves unhappy. So you have some compassion for them, and you help them if you can. But you can't go saying, if you listen to me, I can straighten you out. That isn't going to help them. That'll just make them angry. So there you are. How do you save the world? Start with saving yourself. Let everybody else be the way they are, and be positive. Don't be angry with the people that are screwing it up to the rest of us. They can't help where they are. Everybody has to grow up on their own. You had to grow up through all that stuff that they're having to grow up through. Maybe you didn't do or think the things they are, but it's all a lack of quality of consciousness. And there's nothing you can do except get yourself straight, be helpful and caring as you can, be part of the solution. After that, just enjoy life. Life should be a pleasure. If your life isn't a pleasure, you're not doing something right. Your life should be fun. It should be full of joy. Your relationship should be good. If they're not, you're not doing something right. And it's not, they're not because that person's annoying you. It's not because that person won't do what I say. Well, I mean, stop blaming other people. Your life should be full of joy and happiness and satisfaction if you are doing it right. Because if you're doing it right, it doesn't matter what those other people do. It doesn't matter. You may give them their best advice if they come to you for advice, but if they don't take it or can't take it or they're not ready yet, it's okay. It's just the way it is. And there's some sadness in it. You have watched people hurt themselves, people you love, constantly, hurting themselves with the things they do and I think, but they just have to realize that's where they are. When they need a hug, give them a hug. So that's basically how to deal with the world. It's a nasty, low quality, greedy, pushy place where everybody's trying to take what they can take, manipulate you as best they can, and grab the money and run. But that is just a reflection of who we are. We need to not feed it. We need to step out of it and just be positive. That's the best we can do. I mean, it may go on after us, but eventually enough of us will get there that all the rest will follow, and then indeed be a pleasant, wonderful, beautiful place to live, because the quality of consciousness will be really, really good. And do I know that that's actually going to happen? I do know, because that is where evolution of consciousness is taking us. And evolution may be slow. It's been terribly slow. We've been running around as Homo sapiens for a little over 200,000 years, and we're not a whole lot better off than we were, but we're some better off. And just over the last 500 years, we're much better off. But yeah, progress is making it. Guess what? That progress accelerates. The more you grow up, the easier it is to grow up more, and that curve will just go like this, and eventually it's going to get steep. And I think we're right on that knee where it's starting to get steep now. So now is when you're going to have your greatest influence, because there's a lot of people just like you who would like to be happier and like to be more positive. We live in an awful world, and that's a downer and depresses them. They'd like to be able to let it go, and with a few good examples here and there and some interesting conversation, you may just break them loose, because we're on that knee of the curve where change can happen quickly. So these are very important times that we're living in now. And the first time ever humanity has had the opportunity to take big steps forward rather than baby steps forward. Whether we'll do it or not, it's up to us. But at least for the first time, it's there. And that's because we have the internet that allows us to all almost become a family. When things happen all over the world, we know about it. Ideas move around quickly where they didn't before. Somebody came up with a brilliant idea. Well, that brilliant idea, you could stand on a soapbox and talk with maybe 30 or 40 people, but that's as far as it got. Now, good ideas can spread. Bad ideas can spread too. But I'm just saying we have the potential. We have the possibility of making some big steps forward. We also have the potential to make some big steps backwards. That's possible too, but I don't think that's where we're going, because I see a lot of people like Stu who are out there trying to help. A lot of people will click on Stu's channel because they get information that makes them feel better, makes their life work better. And that's happening all over. There's 1,000 Stu's and Thomas Campbells out there trying to be helpful in their own way. And even if some of them don't really have the big picture, that's all right. They're pointing in the general right direction. So we can not worry too much. It's not the purity of the message that's important. It's that people get involved and have to live it. Not just talk about it or listen to it, but live it. So that's the key. So if I've done all 8 of them, then good. I'm glad to have done that.
Absolutely. You did a few without even having to be asked explicitly. So it's quite impressive. in that sense, particularly. Wow, yes, we went through all of them, and brilliant advice as well to be in our heart centers, and to worry and focus on ourselves, eliminate the fear aspect, and really create the world that we
Yeah.
want to be
Yeah.
a part of. Um, Tom, can you tell our listeners where we can find more information about your work, your current efforts, as well as future plans?
Sure. You said something that confuses some people there. You said, let me get my mic here back. I want just fell out of my ear. This is not a mic I usually use. You said that we need to work on ourselves, and that's true. But it sounds like, didn't you just say that we need to stop paying attention to ourselves and we need to work with other people and not make it all about us? Well, yes, you got to do both. In order for you to give that attention to those other people, you need to get rid of your fear. You can't do it with your fear. So then you have to work on yourself. So to get to that point where you can be that positive force, step one, you work on yourself. And then your ability to be that positive force starts to grow and grow and grow. So yes, it's both of those. So some people get confused. What do you mean I have to work on myself? You just don't start working on myself and work on other people. But you have to take the first things first. And the first thing is to get your own head on straight, to get your own attitudes pulled in, to get some of those beliefs gotten rid of, those fears gotten rid of, and then you will find just without doing anything, you're actually helping the larger world because it'll just come naturally. That giving to the world will just happen. You don't have to plan it. It just happens all by itself.
Yeah.
So,
and as you mentioned, there's no real black and white. It's dynamic. It's all something that we need to be aware of and be doing simultaneously.
Exactly. All of it all the time. Yes. All of it all the time. Your capacity to give to the world depends on your ability to get rid of the bears. But no, you work on it all together. It's all one thing. You don't wait till you're perfect. Now I'll help the world because now I'm perfect now. You don't need perfection. All you need is just a single kind word to say to somebody. That'll start right there. That's all you need. So okay, what's going on with me? Well, you can find me on my website, which is www.molly-big-toe.com. You can find me. You can find the experiments that I'm doing. We never talked about physics or experiments, but I'm doing some quantum physics experiments that will lend credibility to the fact that this is a virtual reality and that consciousness is the computer. And you can find out about those at CUSAC.org, CUSAC, Center for the Unification of Consciousness and Science, CUSAC, Science and Consciousness. Anyhow, you can order that there. And
I'll include the links in the description below
if you
as
don't
well.
like books, you can find them any places you can order books. I've got an event, a symposium going on this fall. It's going to be end of September, early October. You can find out about that. There's going to be a lot of interesting speakers, interesting people. It's going to be a lot of fun, but it's not going to be like your typical symposium. It's not going to be go listen to the speaker speak. Speaker gets up and goes. Go listen to the next speaker. Go listen to the next. It's not going to go and be listening to speakers tell you things. I don't like those kinds of symposiums and events. They become tedious and boring after a while. Your mind fills up and you need time to process all that stuff. You can't just pile up another load without processing all of it. And a lot of it just falls off and goes away. So you can't process that fast anyway. So we're going to have speakers, but we're also going to have fun. It's going to be a social situation. It's going to be a lot of networking. We're going to get to know each other. I'll be there and all the time, and I'll be giving a couple of talks to just be part of the happening. is going to be good. We're going to have some people who will put a thing on their whoops. They will put a strip that receives your brainwaves, your electromagnetic brainwaves, and each individual brainwave frequency, they will assign an instrument, like a orchestra instrument to that, and also different things like timing and tempo, and all of that get assigned based on your brainwaves, and then depending on how you're thinking, if your thinking's chaotic, well, you'll get kind of chaos. If your thinking is not chaotic, you'll get melody and you'll get harmony and a lot of other things. It's just amazing what beautiful music you can make just by meditating and letting your mind create music. So there'll be fun things like that. There'll be a guy coming from TMI who is going to demonstrate some of his spatial technology, which will almost guarantee that you will find yourself in some other reality other than just this one. There's a room that we're going to have that's just going to be hands-on, doing things, experimenting, whatever. It's just all sorts of things. And then we're going to have some musicians kind of wandering around, playing music, break time, lunchtime, dinner time. And then in the evening, they're going to get together and do a little concert. And after that, we're going to dance. We're going to have fun. We're going to talk and act and play and have conversations. So every night is going to be a party. And every night's going to be, it's going to be a learning situation. You'll learn a lot of things. You'll meet a lot of people. So that's the kind of symposium that is being planned. And whether we pull off or not, I don't know, we're working on it. But that's the kind of thing that we're planning to do. It's going to be the theme is consciousness and science. So that's the thing, consciousness and science. If you would like to come join, well, you'll find a way to do that probably at my site. I'm not really sure where. I guess you could go to Cusac's site too. Just ask around if you have a problem, but you should find out advertised somewhere on the site. And just push buttons and see what happens, and hopefully the navigation is not too confusing. But yes, that's kind of what's going on, and hope you show up for the symposium. There'll be a lot of good people there giving you insights. All kinds of interesting things. There's a friend of mine who works with the experiments with me. He owns a fairly large company that makes VRs and video games, and he's very successful at that. And he's going to talk about a game that he's going to make where the only way to level up is by using your intent.
Wow.
Intention's going to level you up. So whether you wander around clueless in the playing field or whether you level up and go to the next level, it's going to be because you used your intent to modify random numbers to give you something that was cleverly random.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so
that's practicing.
Yeah,
intent.
That's a good trainer. Yeah, you see, they talk about getting your intuitive side trained up. Well, he's thinking about producing some software that will be fun, and you get to play in it, and it should be interesting. So he's going to get to talk about that and how that's coming along, and about how the experiments are coming along, and it's just going to be a lot of interesting, fun stuff. So if you can get as many people as you can to come join us for that consciousness and science symposium, it should be something that you walk away with a whole lot of new friends and contacts and connections, and a lot of people who didn't ever hear you before well now, and you don't know a lot of people, so it's more focused at individual connection than it is focused on lectures. So there will be lectures there. I'll be giving one of them or two myself, but there'll be talks there. But that's not the main idea the main idea is to get people together and give them spaces in which they can connect and provide some social space too, where they can just kind of unwind and be themselves.
Oh, that's fantastic. That sounds not just fun, but incredibly productive in all the right ways. And always so surprising, pleasantly surprising to just see how much of an impact these direct transmissions, face to face communication, really has, and um, can really help us along our journeys. Just meeting up face to face and sharing this sort of
Mm-hmm.
information with a sort of intent that's going to be at the symposium. So I, encourage everybody to look into this event. I'm going to include the information in the description. Tom, I'm going to get that information from you, and I'm gonna put that where everybody can see it. And it sounds like a wonderful idea, especially with everything that's going to be going on, the folks that you're bringing on, the particular VR game in which you use your intent to level up. It's just a phenomenal
Yeah,
idea,
yeah.
and I look forward to seeing how it goes as well. And it's I think that more needs to be done like that, where people do get together, people do have a great time, and at the same time, that intent is to collectively grow. I think that's
Yep.
fantastic that you're doing that. Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you've done and all that you've choose to be. We discussed this briefly here and there, but I think it's often overlooked that beings of your quality really have the option of not coming forth with such insights and retreating, as we discussed, into kind of like the modern day equivalent of caves to enjoy really the comforting experience of
Yeah.
solitude. But you've instead chosen to share your perspectives with the world in order to help the rest of humanity to progress towards ultimate liberation, unity, and joy. And I wish you tremendous success, health, happiness on your journey, and would love to have you back on sometime should your schedule allow for it. There's so many things we didn't touch on that we could have touched on. I feel like I could continue talking to you for hours, and I'll just continue to learn more and more. So thank you so much, and I wish you the best, all the best. And for our viewers, we're gonna include all the links to the description, links that Tom was discussing, or the different events that he was discussing. We're gonna post the links to those events and to his website down below in the description. Tom, thank you so much.
Quite welcome, Stu. And those people you talk about who kind of seclude themselves rather than go out and embrace humanity, I think they just haven't grown up quite enough yet, because look, the point is love. Love is about what you give. And as long as there are people out there who want to learn and grow, then if you're expressing love, then you want to be there to help them. If you've learned something that they don't, if there's something you can pass on, you've got some wisdom that will help them see bigger pictures, then to make the choice of, I'd rather go, sit in a nice, quiet, serene place and contemplate my navel, that is not the right choice. The right choice is, if you're going to care about people, well, you don't care about people from behind a closet. You care about people by getting up and embracing them and interacting with them and talking to them, being with them. It's that's just the natural part of the game. If you're one of these, you run into some of these gurus sometimes, and they say, "Oh, this is my last time here. I'm finally going to exit this hellhole. I'm not coming back here anymore. I've become enlightened, and I'm going on. I'm never going to be here." Well, to me, that just tells me that they've got a long way to go. They haven't reached enlightenment yet, because that's the sound of self-centeredness. I want to get out of here because this is a nasty place, and I've earned it. I deserve it. Yes, right. All your sentences start with I. It's That's not somebody who's grown up. Somebody that's grown up says, well, how can I help? What else can I do? And
Absolutely.
you want to be part of that. So I think it's not, I don't pat myself on the shoulder. It's just natural. It's just a natural step. It's what I'm saying. It's not that anybody who's on a growth path will not seclude themselves. That's unless, of course, they're writing. Maybe they're writing text that will eliminate many, or maybe they're doing other things. You shouldn't make big judgments like that. But in general, your biggest contribution is in embracing people.